in the Meiji era, where peace is supposedly restored and swords are disbanded, everything you think would be going fine. After the revolution, you chilled out for a bit. You know, it's a time of peace now. Everyone's relaxing. Wrong. There are those that still wander this earth, still in the mindset of the revolution. And you have a man who has given up that way of life. Man has a reverse blade sword and a cross on his cheek. The last man you would actually think to want to live a peaceful life. He is a wanderer. His name is Kenshin. And this anime is a story about him. This is my review of Rurouni Kenshin Seasons 1 and Season 2. Let's get into it. Okay. Yo, what's up guys? The Insane Gamefreak here, and here to bring you my Rurouni Kenshin review. I'm deciding to use a different camera because not everyone wants to see me stand up all the fucking time. The only problem with this camera is purely the jagginess of this fucking webcam, but that's besides the point. Essentially, I am reviewing Rurouni Kenshin Season 1 and Season 2. Now, obviously, because I'm reviewing Season 2, there are going to be mild spoilers, so I'm warning you now, and if I can, I'll warn you at a certain point in the video when I start going into Season 2 territory and spoilers dealing with that. But essentially, let's get into the plot and the story of Rurouni Kenshin. Okay, so Rurouni Kenshin is essentially about a dude named Kenshin Himura. He is known through the series as Batosai the Manslayer. He fought for the Imperialists during the whole revolution, and now that the revolution is over and the Imperialists won, we have an Imperialist government in the Meiji era. Peace is restored, so there's no need for swords and shit. And essentially, he's just wandering. Now, the story starts kind of randomly. Essentially, what happens is Kenshin's just wandering throughout the area, and this girl runs up to him and thinks, "You must be the Batosai the Manslayer," not realizing how right she is. But then she's like, "Oh wait, that's a reverse blade sword." Yeah, you're just probably some weak dude. It's like you shouldn't be carrying swords. You know, the swords are banned. Why are you carrying a sword? He's like, "Oh, I'm just a wanderer." And essentially, and the girl's name is Kaoru, because you have like 4 main characters, but in the first episode you're only introduced to 2, Kenshin and Kaoru. Essentially, what has been happening is that there's this random swordsman going around attacking everybody, claiming to be Batosai the Manslayer, while using the Kami Kashin style, which is the name of the style that Kaoru's family teaches at her dojo, because she's like the only one there anymore. I guess I think her parents are dead if I remember right. So she's like the only one that's teaching the Kami Kashin style, but no one wants to learn it purely because, you know, swords have been disbanded for one thing. So there's no need to be there to be a dojo to teach swordsmanship. Plus that Kami Kashin style is a style of the sword that's, you know, made to protect people. Most people who learn swordsmanship, even back then, wanted to kill niggas. That was the whole point of the Kami Kashin. The Kami Kashin style was useless to most guys. If you were still swordsmanship, you weren't doing it to protect people. Most people were doing it to kill people, so that's the other reason. But she couldn't stand to have someone killing using her family style, essentially. As the episode kind of goes on, Kenshin kind of ends up hanging with Kaoru, and there's a key thing in the first episode that happens, and there's a speech he gives that I really like. But essentially, this random guy, some guy apparently who had an issue with Kaoru's father, because Kaoru's father didn't like the way he used the sword. So essentially, he pretended to be the Batosai and was using the style that he was taught to kind of get back at her family. Because essentially, he still had that whole idea of killing people with the Kami Kashin style. And so the dude like broke his, I believe it was his right hand. And most swordsmen are right-handed swordsmen. You usually can't be a swordsman unless you're right. Let's put it this way. Most swordsmen need their right hand and their left hand. He fucked up his right hand, so he couldn't use it. I forget the dude's name. He shows up a few times. And I should remember his name, but he's just not that important to me, and he's kind of a dick. Essentially, his hand is broken, so he actually ended up learning swordsmanship with his left hand. And essentially, he goes back to kind of attack Miss Kaoru. And that's how they find all this out, that he's essentially just doing this to get back at her family for like fucking his hand up. And this is where Kenshin comes to save him, because at this point, old buddy's been spouting all this fucking ridiculous nonsense about. Well, it's not really nonsense. It's kind of the more realistic way of looking at the world. That who the hell learns swordsmanship not to kill people? The whole idea of swordsmanship for most people is to kill niggas. No one learns it to protect anything. And Karu, you know, obviously has the idealistic way of looking at it, where it's like, no, the Kamikashin style is used to protect people. You shouldn't pick up a sword to kill people. You should try to protect people with them. And Kenshin walks in there, and this is kind of the moment she realizes he's the Batosai when he wrecks him. But before that, he says something I thought was really cool. He says, the way Miss Karu thinks, because he calls Karu Miss Karu for whatever reason. He says the way she thinks is very idealistic. She obviously, you can tell just by the way she speaks, that she's the one who's never been involved into a war. She's never really been in like a real death battle. She hasn't really been delved into the real world. That's why she sounds so naive and idealistic when you hear her talk. But I don't mind her. I prefer her idea, to be honest with you. And that's what I like about Kenshin. Because Kenshin's a nigga who's done a lot of shit, dealt with a lot of shit in his life. And even after all that, even though knowing that the dude is spouting some truth to her, he still prefers Miss Karu's. He still thinks Miss Karu's idea is better. Which kind of just adds on to his character, because, I mean, for God's sake, the dude has a reverse blade sword. And for those who don't know what that means, that essentially means a reverse blade sword, you can't kill anyone with a reverse blade sword unless you were to flip it over. Like, fighting with a reverse blade sword essentially means you're fighting with the dull end of the blade, meaning that you're not going to kill anyone with that, which is the whole reason why he fights like that. Because he's a badass with a reverse blade sword. But he doesn't need to. And I honestly just spent like almost 7-8 minutes talking about that. But anyways, he wrecks the dude, and essentially that's how the story is. He stops being a wanderer and kind of settles down at Karu's place. And over the course of the series, you're introduced to maybe like 3 other main characters. That would be Sanosuke, Yahiko, and Megumi. Megumi's actually part of an arc in Season 1 I don't want to go too far into. But I will talk about Yahiko and Sanosuke, because those are like the 2 more prevalent. Mind you, there's spoilers here too. Yahiko, the best way to describe Yahiko is essentially a little kid in a bad situation, doesn't know how to get out of it. But instead of having Kenshin being the only thing, Karu is also kind of like the driving force to get him out of that bad situation and put him on a better path, and he becomes a better person for it. That's all I'm really going to go into Yahiko. Sanosuke is kind of the same deal. The difference is that Sanosuke is a beast in his own right. I fucking love Sanosuke. Sanosuke's whole deal is the fact that he hates the imperialist government purely because he was a part of a group that worked with the imperialist government, and they fucked that group up. The name of that group is the Sekihotai, I believe, right? And his entire subsection of the imperialist army was fucked over by the imperialist army, and they kind of ended up taking the blame for some shit. His captain was killed. Sanosuke was like a little kid at the time, so now that he's older, he just has a hate for it. And Kenshin kind of puts him on the right track. So that's essentially what it is. Essentially, the story is literally these 4 characters kind of living day-to-day lives while dealing with bullshit that happens to drag them into it. Like, for example, Kenshin isn't the only survivor of that revolution. There are other people who survived that revolution, and they don't necessarily have the same ideals as Kenshin do. Some people want to just restart revolution. Some people want to destroy this government. There's a lot of fucking different things. And this carries on into Season 2 because of a certain villain that is introduced in Season 2. All I'm going to say is his name is Shishio. He's a bad motherfucker. But there's one group I'm missing. There's one group I haven't mentioned yet that's very important for Season 1 and kind of carries over to Season 2 in a sense. And that is the Oni Waban group. That is very important to pay attention to that name of that group, purely based on that. Not only is that a part of Megumi's story arc, which is near, like, I think it's like somewhere in the middle of Season 1, but it comes back again in Season 2, which is the Kyoto arc. Just purely to just kind of say what, I don't want to say too much, but let me just kind of go in why I like Kenshin, why I like this show. Based off of Season 1, you're gonna get a mild Inuyasha vibe. So if you've seen Inuyasha before this, you're gonna get the same vibe. 4 characters have their own little quirks and shit. I will say right now, they do pull some of the same bullshit with certain characters. Like Yahiko has that same stupid, I'm gonna protect a new girl or a potential girlfriend every goddamn episode, which I know can occasionally piss niggas off because then no one wants to keep fucking seeing that like 8 times. It doesn't happen too many times. I think at the most it happens like 3. Karu's kind of hot-headed, but she's a lot better than some of the other females we gotten shown in because not only can she fight by herself, like she's not like just a weakling, but she's kind of what's the best way to put it? She's not overly annoying. Like the way she's put in the story, she's a good character in her own right, and you obviously can tell she has a thing for Kenshin, like within the early goddamn episodes. But she's not done as like a really bad love interest, and she's not done as a weak character. She's done as a pretty solid character by herself, and they mellow her out with her like typical tsundere kind of attitude with Yahiko, which gives them kind of a cool brother and sister relationship because Yahiko's like a little kid. He has that same little joke. I'm not a little kid. I'm not a little kid. The jokes you get for those kind of characters. And Sanosuke is kind of a moocher kind of character. He's a badass, but he's pretty lazy and he's really cheap. That's just kind of how Sanosuke is. I don't really know what else to say about that. But he's a badass in his own right. But the thing I like about the show is on top of the characters, you have like these cool morals that are going around that to me are kind of timeless. That's the one thing when I say a show is really, really good, that probably means it's one of those shows that's timeless. And for fucking Kenshin is timeless. Kenshin is timeless, especially the second arc. Kyoto arc is, my god, probably one of the most timeless arcs I've seen so far. But the first season has its own merit too. But the whole thing is, on top of the whole ideas of like dealing with the government, kind of deciding your own type of justice, which is something that comes up in the Kyoto arc. It's to me, I think the older audience would like this more than the younger audience, but that's not saying the younger audience wouldn't click with it either. But the older audience, like the ones who have been in wars, the Afghanistan shit we've been dealing with here in America that just got finished, you would click with that because you have these characters who have this. You have a whole bunch of even the villains are characters who were related to the war back then in some way or another. They're all characters who handle it differently, and that's the thing I kind of like. Their characters are all like Kenshin in a sense. Because they all went through virtually the same shit. I mean, fuck, Sanosuke is even one of those characters. I mean, he was a little kid back then, but he still went through some shit. The whole point is that you have these characters who all handle coming out of war differently, and I like that whole idea. Also, Kenshin has some beast speeches. But I've been mentioning Kyoto arc a lot, so let me get into that. So for those who don't want spoilers into Kyoto arc, I would say stop this right now and watch season 1 before watching the rest of this. I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so Kyoto arc, as I said, introduces a villain named Shishio. Shishio is Kenshin's predecessor. As I said, Kenshin is known as the Batosai, the Manslayer. Shishio is the dude who kind of took over afterwards. Now, his reason for saying fuck the imperialist governments, for one, he was like Kenshin. He was working for the imperialist government. But the thing with Shishio was a lot more ruthless, and Shishio knew a lot, way too damn much, and the imperialist army was afraid that Shishio would fuck them over in the future. So essentially, they tried to have him taken care of, meaning that they had his ass burned alive. Essentially, I believe he was like burned alive. That's how they killed him. They just burned him alive. And for whatever reason, this is like the supernatural effect for Kenshin. He didn't die. He just burned, like he just has burnt skin and he wears bandages all over his body. And his reason is purely to get back at them. Also, just believing that the government is incapable of stopping him, and that makes them weak. Because he lives by this one rule: the weak feed the strong. And the strong triumph over everything, essentially. If you're strong, you live. If you're weak, you die. You're going to hear that a lot from Shishio. So if you're not a fan of hearing that repetitively, I'm sorry. You're going to hear that a lot. You're going to hear that a lot. My God, you will hear that shit a lot. It's just as redundant as me saying you'll hear it a lot. Essentially what it is that Kenshin's friends, the government, ask him to go and stop Shishio, essentially. Now, there's this one character that's introduced in Kyoto. This dude name is Saito. Oh my god, Saito. And here's the thing. When you first meet Saito, Saito's going to come off as a villain. Hell, even when I'm watching him, he still feels like a villain to me. But he's actually a good guy, but it takes you a minute to realize it. Especially after the fight is when you really realize that he's a good guy. But essentially, he kind of brings up another issue that Kenshin has to deal with that I haven't really mentioned yet. Kenshin has, like, this issue of his where if he's put in certain extreme situations or he's cornered, essentially if you corner Kenshin in a situation that he can't win as himself, he has the tendency to revert to his manslayer thing. And no, it's not like on some Naruto Inuyasha bullshit. But let's just say the difference between his normal self and his manslayer self is that his normal self won't kill anyone. Manslayer Kenshin will kill niggas. That was the whole thing. Now, are you asking, does he ever kill anyone in the manslayer form in the series? I'm not going to say. But just know that that's going to happen from time to time. And Kyoto Arc kind of focuses on that partially, too. Because everyone keeps telling you got to turn to a manslayer. You're not going to be able to beat Shishio if you don't turn into a manslayer. And he has to deal with this internal struggle, which I thought was done really well. Instead of this fucking bullshit. No, I'm not going to do it. If I go in here, I'm going to go into a Naruto rant. We're not going to do it. But let's just say he does the internal struggle better than other characters that we know. Ichigo! Naruto! I gotta throw in a cheap shot every once in a while. But anyways, essentially, after that, that's essentially what the two things it's based on. And it's also based on the whole concept of justice and whose justice is right. I'm not really going to spoil as much. I'm actually probably not going to spoil anything. I can make it a discussion in that in itself, but I don't want to. At least not in this video. Because I want you guys to watch it. I don't want to spoil that. Let's just say the Kyoto arc is a very deep and emotional arc for a lot of characters. There's a certain character that comes back from the first season that is very important purely based on the bullshit he was on when he left the first season. There's just a lot of shit you gotta deal with, even in the fucking Juppon Gatna, which you don't know what the fuck that is, but just there's a lot of shit for Kyoto arc that you really need to get into. But I don't want to spoil any of that. But so essentially what it boils down to is Kenshin is a great series. Kenshin to me is a very timeless show. I think you can watch it at any time, no matter what age you are. Certain things might go over your head, but for the most part, it is very enjoyable. The fights to me aren't necessarily amazing, but they are pretty damn good, especially the later fights near the end of the Kyoto arc. Those are really fucking good. There is some filler-ish moments in the first season, but it's not anything you shouldn't be used to, especially if you can sit here and watch like fucking 80 to 90 episodes of filler from some of these big 3 shows, or fucking even the ridiculous filler in Inuyasha. If you can watch that, Kenshin's it's not even really filler. It just feels like filler because of how campy it is, and kind of how stereotypical it is, like the fucking wrestler filler. But that's me going in, or the Cannonball Girl filler with Yahiko. But the whole point is, each of the characters get their own sense of development. Sanosuke kind of has to put himself through kind of has to improve his strength, kind of show that he's not a burden to others. Also, one thing about Sanosuke I'm going to go ahead and mention right now that really doesn't have much to do with anything except for his introduction. Where the fuck did that sword go? What was the point of him having that sword if Kenshin was going to break it and that's the end of that damn sword? What was the point? What was the point? I'm sorry, that pissed me off because I wanted to see him at least use the sword, seriously. I don't know, that's just me nitpicking. But essentially, that's really all I can say without spoiling too much for Kenshin. But it's a great series. I say check it out. I believe it's worth the time. I honestly think it's better than Yu Yu Hakusho. That's just me, though. I prefer Yu Yu Hakusho. That could be just because it took me 3 times to get into Yu Yu Hakusho and finish it, but that's just me. But essentially, I would definitely go suggest getting it. Unfortunately, for this series is very weird, and there is a 3rd season, and the 3rd season is strict filler. From what I understand, Third season is filler, so I'm not even gonna fuck with that. I'm probably gonna go into the OVAs and the movie, and I'll stick with that shit. But fuck the filler. I wouldn't mind it, but I just don't see the point in reviewing filler, especially for you guys especially when I'm talking to anime fans who know most of the canon shit. So I'll just stick to the canon. Essentially, that's about it though that I can at least talk about. In the comments section, I want everybody in the grandma, because I know there are a lot of Kenshin fans. Put in the description why people should check out Kenshin. If you haven't seen it, tell me if you're curious. If you're going to check it out, video responses, comments, all that fun shit. All the feedback you can give, the rating, the likes, the dislikes. I may have not done the series enough justice, and if that's what the case, I don't give a fuck if you dislike it, because that's how I learned how to get better. That's just how it works. But anyways, I believe that's it. So I thank you guys for watching. Life's a Game and Play to Win. I will put the link in the description to get the DVDs. Even though they are high as fuck, I'm warning you now, they are pretty fucking high because they're rare as fuck. And do not get the Funimation dub of this. Get the fucking, I believe it's the is it the ADV dub? No. It's the Anime Works. Look for the Anime Works dub of Kenshin. Do not get the Funimation version. But all in all, that's about it. So I guess I'll catch you guys later.
Peace out. No, I'm just playing. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out.